Welcome back to the show. It's your girl Sarah right here on the Sunrise, and I'm super excited to be here because we're having a very important and even interesting conversation about miscarriages. Right now, the reason we're having this conversation obviously is because there is a lot of stigma, there is a lot of shame that surrounds miscarriages, and it's very important for us to actually keep having this conversation so that we can break the shame and the stigma that exists around these things. Okay, and the reason, obviously, I'm talking about it as well is because Carrie and Boris Johnson rather recently announced that they are expecting their second child, and with that, she also, in a post on Instagram, she also wrote that she feels very blessed to feel pregnant again, especially after that miscarriage. So obviously, that's why we are talking about miscarriages, and also recently. I've sort of started noticing that when it comes to a lot of celebrities, a lot of women who've gone through miscarriages, and not just celebrities, a lot of other women are actually opening up about their experiences of miscarriages, because obviously, this is something that we need to start talking about, right? There's so much of silence attached to it as well, because women tend to think that if they talk about it, it's so much of a taboo topic that you really shouldn't be talking about it, which is really, in fact, a very negative way to think about the problems that you are going through, especially something as serious as miscarriage, right? Which is why we are having this conversation, so we can make people understand that attaching silence and shame and stigma to something like miscarriage is, in fact, a terrible way to go about a problem that is so serious, and it would actually have a lot of detrimental effects. All right, that's what we're talking about. Now, make sure you stay tuned because, like I said, we're going to be talking about all of this. But until then, before we head back into our conversation, I want to very quickly remind you that you can, in fact, get in touch with us. All right, so the number to text is, in fact, available right there, on that banner for you. It's 078 Text me, call me, whatever it is that you want to do. Let me know what your thoughts are on miscarriages. Let me know why you think this stigma exists around miscarriages, and what we can do to break that stigma. All right, text me, call me, and also don't forget to go like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. That way you can actually make sure that you're always informed, you're always updated about everything that happens, not just here in the UK, but in fact all over the entire world. Okay, because information is just one tap away. That's all you need to do. Just press on that button and think about, you can always get to know everything that is happening all over the entire world. Okay, it's as easy as that. So don't forget to do that. And obviously, I want to remind you that Relax Radio is all about you. All right, so don't forget to tell me about you. It's all about positivity. It's about making sure that there's no negativity. That's why we're having these conversations as well, because we want to break the negativity that surrounds us. Okay, so make sure you do that. Now, something else that you can actually do is actually to go download our app, which is available on both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. You can listen in from either your iOS device or your Android device, and make sure that you're always informed and you're always updated with regard to the conversation that is happening. All right. So don't forget to do that. Don't forget to share your thoughts and your opinions with me, because I want to know what you're thinking. Right now, however, we'll get back into our conversation, because we need to talk about why exactly this stigma exists. All right. Now, I have three words to actually elaborate or tell you, or three words that I can actually use to describe miscarriage, right? And these are the three words that are attached in terms of describing miscarriages as well. All right, and you can basically find this on the internet. You can basically find it anywhere. If someone talks about their miscarriage, these three words will always be attached to it, and these three words are silence, stigma, and shame. All right, now the reason I wanted to really tell you about these three words is individually they have a lot of meaning, right? For example, if you take the word silence, they are referring to the silence that a lot of women have, especially women who go through miscarriages. They're very silent about it, and let's talk about why, but we'll get that we'll get into that in a few minutes, right? So, a lot of women who have gone through miscarriages are in fact very, very silent about it. All right. Secondly, there is a lot of stigma that is associated with miscarriages. And the reason that there is a lot of stigma that is in fact associated with miscarriages is because, like I said, a lot of being a woman is tied to motherhood, and is tied to, having children, right? So being a mother, or rather, being a woman is tied to motherhood, is tied to having a family, having children, right? And when you can't necessarily fulfill these according to society standards, right? When you can't have children, or if you have a child and you have a miscarriage, then a lot of those things will actually make you feel ashamed, right? And that's just the truth of it, right? There is a lot of stigma that is attached to it, simply because of the way in which society views the role of a mother. You essentially view the role of a mother as something, as something that makes basically view the role of a mother as someone who's there to essentially make sure that they give birth and have a happy and healthy pregnancy, which really isn't the case for a lot of women out there. All right. So that is number two. And number three is shame. A lot of women out there, especially women who've gone through miscarriages, tend to feel ashamed about their experience, which isn't something that they should be feeling ashamed about in the first place, right? And we'll talk about all of this, but these three concepts are in fact responsible for so many of the challenges that pregnant people face today. All right, especially when it comes to pregnancy and infant loss. And they actually work in concert, right, at all times, nearly at all times, because they tend to obstruct conversations and connection around this all too common topic, and isolating those who actually experience it. All right, so that's what this is about. Now make sure you stay tuned, because we're going to head into a small break, and after that we will be back to keep talking about this. But until then, make sure you stay tuned.
Again, but now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, "You've had one to forget," God, there'd be an inquest. Me, why did you reject my son? Oh, I haven't rejected your son.
I want to talk about, how the generation gap, how much has changed, especially when you check the youth nowadays in comparison, to people back in the day.
I'd say when I was younger, it was more disciplined. Not now.
In comparison to now.
Not at all. Not now. The way things are nowadays, the younger generation, you seem that they can't accept the word no, if that makes sense. They can't
accept rejection, essentially, is all you're trying to say.
Yeah, they can't accept the word no. So if you, how did I do? Well, you didn't do very well. And they get upset, And when I was a youngster, my father used to say to me, because I used to be sport mad when I was very young. Well, I still am sport mad, but like participating in different sports. And if I had a bad game, for example, I'd say to me, "You had one to forget." That's it.
Your dad sounds like a smart guy. I mean, yeah, that's the real fact of the matter, yeah.
He'd say to me, "You had one to forget. Get over it." And that was it. So I'd dust myself down and do it again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, "You've had one to forget," God, there'd be an inquest. Me, why did you reject my son? Oh, I haven't rejected your son. Or daughter. I've just told them that they need to buck their ideas up.
That's the truth right there. I mean, if you think about it, if you check the generations, like right now in the US as well, I've seen a lot of these things as well. In the UK, you get medals for participation. But what's the point? What are you trying to? Yeah, what's the point? Either you win or you lose. People are so afraid to put that whole notion of losing. When it comes to right now, the generation gap is just crazy. How much a lot has changed. Social media has taken control of our lives, and we don't even realize it anymore. We're crippled because of it.
That's absolutely right, Nick. Because as you said, nowadays it seems that you get rewarded for failure. For the life of me, Nick, I can't get my head around that. Perhaps I'm just getting old and morbid, I don't know. I just can't get my head around how you could be rewarded for failure.
welcome back to the show. It's your girl Sarah right here on Relax Radio, and we're having a very important conversation about miscarriages. All right, so it's important for us to have this conversation. It's important for us to, keep having this conversation because we need to make sure that we try to break all of the stigma that surrounds miscarriages and try to engage and, or rather, encourage as much conversation as we possibly can to make sure that women can actually openly talk about these issues, these struggles that they go through in terms of miscarriages. All right. So we need to do that. And that's why I am here, because I want to make sure that we actually have a safe space for women to talk about their miscarriages. All right. Now you're tuned into the Sunrise, and I'm here to keep you company all the way until 9 a.m. So make sure you stay tuned because I have a lot to be sharing with you. All right. And this is just the second part of the conversation. So make sure you stay tuned because, like I said, there's so much more to have with regard to, or rather, there's so much more to converse with regard to this conversation. All right. Now you can actually directly get in touch with me. All you need to do is just text me on 078 Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you are feeling. Let me know what your thoughts are on miscarriages. All right. Share it with me. Let me know because I can share it with everyone else who's listening in as well. And that way we can actually make sure that we have a good conversation with a lot of perspectives. Okay. And don't forget to go follow us on our socials. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And you can actually, something else that you can actually do is to download an app which is available on both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. All right, now if you download an app, you can listen in from either your iOS device or your Android device, and make sure that you are always a part of the conversation and listening to the conversation. But right now, let's actually get back into our discussion about how, or rather, why this stigma exists. Right now, like I said, there are three words that are commonly used to express shame and, or rather, express miscarriages, and these three words are silence, shame, and stigma. All right, and we spoke about why exactly these feelings existed, why exactly these sort of perspectives existed, and why it's so harmful. All right, but let's talk about it a little bit more. All right, because that, again, like I said, is an important it's an important conversation to be having as well. All right, so like I said, these three concepts actually tend to work together all the time because they tend to isolate women from these very important and necessary conversations or essential conversations that you should have with regard to with regard to or rather with regard to miscarriages. All right, now women still face enormous stigma and shame when they lose a baby, and they're quite often not encouraged to talk about their experience and loss. All right, opening up about loss and expressing grief candidly is in fact very, very important, and you need to be able to express your grief without having very negative reactions to it, because if you do negatively react to someone who's gone through a miscarriage, it can actually, but it can trigger their sense or their feelings of shame and guilt that were attached to that miscarriage, right? Now, something else that will happen if a lot of people open up and start talking about their, miscarriages, is that it will essentially create a sense of community and connectedness during what is somewhat, during what is otherwise an isolating time, right? It will bring a lot of women together where they get to talk about their opinions, where they get to talk about their experiences, and that will actually help a lot of these women to actually be comfortable with talking about their miscarriages. Now, Dr. Tara Narula said that the reason miscarriage carries a stigma for or rather, the reason it is so stigmatized is due to a huge number of factors. All right, so Dr. Tara Narula actually said that because miscarriage is so stigmatized, it's because of the multiple reasons. There are multiple factors that have resulted in miscarriage being so stigmatized. Right now, what she basically said is that as women, our sense of self is in fact tied to motherhood and fertility, right? And this is what I was telling you earlier as well. A lot of women, our womanhood, our purpose of life, our ability to be what you would call a fulfilled woman is essentially tied to having children and being fertile, right? And when we lose a child, the feeling that any mother has is that that mother somehow lost the child, right? That the mother failed, and that there is something wrong with the mother or the mother's body. And then there is a tremendous amount of shame and guilt that actually surrounds these mothers, right? And you try to sort of tend to insulate and not share what exactly happened, right? Because again, because there are these so many perspectives that are attached to being a good mother, right? Like, oh, if you're fertile, if you're meant to be a good mother, you probably won't even go through something like a miscarriage. So basically perceptions like that, right? And the culture actually says that you shouldn't talk about your pregnancy until the end of the first trimester, which is another thing I've come across as well. A lot of these people that I see, actually, they're always like, oh, you know what, you are in a culture, your culture doesn't really want you to talk about your miscarriage, right? And more often than not, you're told not to talk about that miscarriage, which is in fact very, very detrimental for a lot of these women who go through miscarriages, right? And the reason they say not to talk about it or not to share your pregnancy until the end of the first trimester is simply because that first trimester, it does in fact have the most amount of risk for you to lose your child. So that's why they say, look, don't talk about your pregnancy until your first trimester is over. And another thing that we don't realize, and which I've realized recently, is that when we lose someone, a parent, a friend, our dog, our pet, we basically mark it with a ceremony. There are religious rites that we observe. But when it comes to miscarriage, when it comes to losing a child, we don't really have anything like that, right? You just say, oh, I had a miscarriage, and then it's you get it over with, right? So basically you don't really have anything to remember that child by. So that again is in fact something that really, really causes a lot of women to it causes a lot of women to go through a lot of terrible feelings, negative feelings, right? So that's what it is. Now make sure you stay tuned, because right now we're going to head into a small break, and after that we will be back to keep talking about this. But until then, make sure you stay tuned.
The valuations that you place on an asset are always behind you. It's always in hindsight. It's never in front of you. And that's one of the challenges, right? Because you're always valuing what happened yesterday, and what you need is what's going to happen tomorrow.